Though I have had a garden for about 4 years now consistently, it has taken me until this year to finally start pruning. And let's talk about why, because I think when I look into the reasons why, it'll also address some issues that I've commonly had with other things in my life, like friendships and boundaries and such, because I think they're all coming rooted in the same root issue. So as somebody who grew up with parents who didn't have a ton of wealth, but who were very frugal, I was taught to be very conservative when it comes to my resources. I didn't get rid of anything that still had any sort of utility. And so I think when I look at a plant and I see any sort of leaf or flower that I see as potentially still having utility, I am really hesitant to take it off. But the thing is for plants, once a leaf or a flower or something like that starts to die, it really is no longer serving the plant. And especially with roses, things like dead leaves and leaves that have little bug bites in it and dying flowers, it just is vector for disease. And I think relationships and friendships and boundaries are kind of the same way. If you don't prune your relationships every now and again, look through the ones that are not serving you as well as they used to be, I think that's a really important thing that a lot of people don't do anymore. I think social media has made it really easy to stay in contact with people, and we don't often ask ourselves, is this friendship or is this relationship serving me in any positive ways? Because that's the thing. I've gotten to the point in a lot of my relationships where they weren't serving me any longer. Like, sure, they weren't, outrightly, I didn't think they were causing me problems. And when I cut away the relationships that, weren't completely diseased, but were starting to go, that was when I realized just how much those relationships were holding me back. Much like this rose plant, it devotes resources trying to save these dying areas that it could be spending on flowers and, leaves that are actually healthy. A lot of times we invest time maintaining these relationships, especially if you are somebody who grew up lower income or with more frugal parents who kind of conveyed in you that value of not wasting things, not taking them for granted, using them until you get every little last bit of utility. And there's definitely value to that with some things. I think we should be having a better relationship with our clothes. We should be repairing our clothes and a longer relationship with them, not getting rid of them seasonally. So I've been trying to replace my wardrobe with things that I know that I'm gonna like wearing for years and just try to dedicate myself to maintaining those clothes. I think that's a scenario where maintenance is worthwhile, especially because the cost of clothing is often not just financial. There's sweatshops and other type of labor that's not great for the people that are making the clothes. So that's another thing I really try to be invested in, making sure that I'm not continuing to cause damage to communities by, continuing to buy sweatshop products and things like that. If I need something from a company of that nature, I just try and get it second owned if at all possible. For me, especially as someone who was late diagnosed autistic, I didn't necessarily realize how many friendships required me to really intensely mask and pretend to be somebody that I was not. And cutting some of those friendships just because the effort of unmasking and reestablishing with somebody who I wasn't getting a lot out of in the first place. Some of my relationships were people that were just really emotionally draining me. A lot of my friends got used to the fact that because, I'm sick, a lot of times I'm awake weird hours. So if they're in the middle of the night and they're having a mental health crisis, they know they can reach out to me. But when I can't expect the same and when that's the only time they reach out to me, I need to realize that those people are using me. They're not providing any value to my life, and those are the type of relationships that need to be pruned. And as somebody that has chronic fatigue and has energy issues, a lot of the times it is really important that I use my energy in ways that are going to pay off for me long term, If I'm investing my energy in somebody, I need to know that that person is also going to do something to benefit my life. I'm not even one of those people who feels that everything needs to be equal, because that's not really a realistic perception of how the world works. people have different physical and mental and emotional capabilities, and, you know, we just come together and get the things done as they need to get done, you know? But it can't be one of those situations where I'm give, and the moment I try to ask for something in return, I'm seen as, you know, unreasonable or having expectations that aren't worth meeting. I find a lot of times in my relationships with cishet men that they especially if they are single, they very heavily rely on me to be their emotional support and such, and I'm not about that life. But I didn't realize, because, like, you know, they would throw me a little bit of a nicety every once in a while, so it wasn't until I stepped back and was like, what am I actually getting out of these friendships? Like, are these people that if I call and I'm like, hey, I'm having a bad night, like, will you talk to me? Will they talk to me? Or are they people that are just going to be busy and, you know, because if I'm available for them all the time, there has to be some level of reciprocity, you know? But like, as a whole, I highly recommend people look at the people and the relationships that they're involved in. And one of the best pieces of advice that I was given is to never put in more than you're getting out. And I know that sometimes that can be hard because we don't always recognize like emotional labor and things like that. But I think once you start recognizing the emotional labor that you're putting out, you can identify when you are being taken advantage of. And whenever I have that feeling, I step back and I'm like, is this serving me anymore? Or is this something that I'm just keeping out of habit, out of social nicety? Because I think that I may need these people in the future and I'm afraid to give up that connection. You know, is it because they have a rich daddy, you know, and you think that, I know a lot of people that keep friends in their life just because they have a rich daddy and that daddy gets said friend out of trouble, but like that friend is always getting them in trouble too. There's a lot of reasons that we keep people in our lives that are not necessarily, like, if you're keeping somebody in your life, it should be somebody that you actively want. And I know that a lot of times people use the excuse, well, I'm so busy, but you need to know, part of respecting your friends is knowing what your limits are and the number of friendships that you can keep up on. And if you realize that you're not able to commit to your friends in the same way that they're committing to you, like, you have to do something about that. That's part of being like a quote unquote good person or a responsible person, is recognizing when your existence is causing undue harm on the existence of others and not waiting for those people to be like, hey, you're overwhelming me. So that is my thoughts on pruning. Prune some of these plants out. I definitely need to prune more of my plants, but that's all I have time for today. If you've watched thus far, you must have liked something, so please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out my channel a lot, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.